So starting with some background on the Te Tōtara framework will be Anne-Marie Thomas, the LIANZA project manager for the Te Tōtara Workforce Project. Anne-Marie has a background in workforce development in the health and education sectors, having managed teams in public, private and non-governmental organisations. And we will then hear from 3 Otago University kaimahi who will be sharing their different ways that they're putting the framework into practice. Siobhan Smith is the Associate University Librarian for Customer Experience. She also has a background in teaching and is neurospicy. That is neurodivergent in lots of interesting ways. Having built a capability framework for research librarians, she was invited to participate in the co-design sessions for Te Tōtara and has followed its progress ever since, joining the community of practice and looking at how to incorporate it into professional development at Otago Waka i Tū Waka. Frank Edwards is the Associate University Librarian for Maori Strategic Development. With a background in public service and Maori student support, Frank brings a wealth of experience and a strong commitment to uplifting Maori voices and initiatives. His journey in these roles has naturally led to his current position, where he focuses on advancing Maori strategic development within the University Library. Frank will be talking about team building, including building a shared language and culture. Then Sela Pulafehoko is the Pacific Engagement Advisor at the University of Otago Library. And she has worked in engagement for many years at several universities, focusing on research, student engagement, recruitment, and until recently, career development. She's been in the library for over a year, helping to shape Pacific engagement by working with Pacific Strategic Framework and collaborating with various library services and community groups on campus. And Sela will share how she is using the framework in engagement with Pacific students, demystifying and familiarising them with the library and for career planning. So as Angie said, if you have questions as we go along, please pop them in the chat and we'll have time afterwards to answer them. So thank you very much. I'll pass over now to our first speaker, Anne-Marie.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Ko Anne-Marie Thomas tōku ingoa. I'm coming to you today from Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau, sort of like the other end of the motu from those of you in Otago. Very excited to be able to share what these early adopters are doing with the Te Tōtara framework. Just to give you a whistle-stop tour of Te Tōtara, there will be a direction to find more resources for those of you who are less familiar with it, but I know some of you are also using or considering using Te Tōtara. So not a deep dive today, but just an intro really to as background to what the Otago team are doing. Te Tōtara is a workforce capability framework, and it's for the library and the information sector of New Zealand. It's an Indigenous framework, something unique and very library specific. It supports you to think about your current level of knowledge and skills, and it's a tool for you. It's also a tool for strengthening the team and strengthening the wider workforce. The web page, LIANZA has this responsibility for pulling together and holding the resources for Te Tōtara, and in this project we have been collating them and further refining them. And this is your go-to place for all the information on Te Tōtara. It's also on the National Library website. That's the original project version that was from 2022. So Te Tōtara, it's a tool for supporting library teams to build a learning and development culture, as you'll see with Otago today, and also a people planning culture looking ahead. And you'll see examples of both growing capabilities and promoting career pathways from Siobhan, Frank, and Sella today. It's a tool at the individual level. We've got resources there that an individual can pick up and run with and utilize to develop their own sense of where their capabilities are in relation to their current role, their current organizational setting, and to look at their strengths and to look at their areas for growth. It's also a tool for teams to create shared goals. And it is a tool that's very useful as a visual. It's a very nice visual, as you can see, for demonstrating organisational alignment, but also sharing this is what our capabilities are made up of in our team with others who may not have that knowledge, that direct knowledge of the library team. So the metaphor is one of a tōtara tree, which is an indigenous species. It's a very strong, tall tree in its mature form, and it is something that the heartwood has been used to for waka, for Māori for centuries. It's a prize tree. It's also a tree that you'll find holds up fence posts all around the country. It's a very durable tree. It's a very nice metaphor for the library and information sector. It also gives you a wider metaphor of trees in a forest, the interconnected trees, the ngāhere. That's the team of people who make up all the capabilities that you bring. And then it's the wider system, again, the ecosystem, the library and information sector, and the communities around it. So the elements using this metaphor are those of the roots, ngā paiaka, and these roots have been developed with an Indigenous context and use kaupapa, particularly service-oriented kaupapa, to describe the capabilities of service for caring for collections and communities and customers. The trunk is te tiwai, the trunk. It is about the ethics and the standards that keep the sector solid, and refers to them in this framework document. The branches are the capabilities themselves, and then the fallen leaves represent that lovely cycle of reflection and learning, which is part of that learning and development culture that we all look for in our professional life. So the roots, you'll see there are 7 principles. Those roots also honour Te Tiriti o Waitangi and embrace Mātauranga Māori as important components of being in the community, providing service to the community and protecting and supporting knowledge and sharing knowledge. So this kind of places the capabilities in place, and it's very interesting to see how Māori librarians are developing even further capability description, which work very well for people who are working closely in that area of working with Māori hapu and iwi around their community collections and knowledge. The trunk refers to the IFLA core values and code of ethics, as well as the LIANZA code of professional conduct and the bodies of knowledge. And this framework sits alongside the bodies of knowledge. They're adjacent. And whereas with professional registration, you might bring to it what you've done, the Te Tōtara capability framework is very useful in focusing on what you want to do, and then can feed into being able to share what you've done when you apply for registration or revalidation. There are 23 core capabilities within 7 capability groups. You'll see on the left-hand side, those personal attribute group, the teamwork and collaboration group, community care and services, planning, management and leadership at the top. They're all quite relational capabilities. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that they tend to be more technical ones, more knowledge and skills capabilities, including literacies, reference and research services, information, knowledge and data management, collection, records and archives management. And you can select and customize which of these groups you're dipping into and going to look at in your own journey. The assessment is a self-assessment one. This is a tool you pick up and use for yourself in your context. And there are 4 levels that you can self-assess against. It is not a goal to be at the top and to know everything at once. That's not how people are as human beings. We strengthen our knowledge at different levels over time. So this is really looking at maybe the kōrero level for some new recruits, people new to the sector, looking at mōhio or people who are in their early years. They have strengths and knowledge and skills, but they're in a development phase. Marama is for those who are more experienced. You might consider yourself marama in one area, but kōrero in another, for example. And then Mātou is about the those people who have gone into significant specialisation and feel very confident and capable, often the experienced leaders and mentors of others. And the kōrero level, you will see there are resources that go with the framework, worksheets and workbooks. The kōrero level isn't really included there, but it's very important to have it there as a conversational level for new starters. But you will see that you can self-assess against the other 3 levels in the resources available to you. So an example of a capability, here's literacies, reference and research. This one is the digital literacy and dexterity that I've just pulled out as an example. It has a statement, capability statement, the ability to understand, use and actively participate in media, information and communication technologies, to find, evaluate, create and communicate information and help people live, learn, work and thrive in a digital society. There are 6 elements underneath this capability, and I'm just showing you one of 6 here, the first one being digital wellbeing. So just looking at those levels again, at the mōhio level, that's described as behaving safely, ethically and responsibly in a digital environment. At the marama level, supporting others is more the focus there. That's around delivering safe, responsible digital practices. At the Mātou level, developing and projecting a positive digital presence, managing digital reputation, so more of that meta level. And then the 4th part of the metaphor, that fallen leaves part, is a section at the end of the framework with some really nice questions to support you to self-reflect and self-evaluate, and to ask yourself questions. And I've given you some examples of questions from that section. When you look at this, you're also looking at your strengths, not just your areas for development. So what do you want to do in your development areas? What deliberate strategies do you use in that area? What are your key lessons learnt which you could teach to others? This one I think is really important. Have I had the opportunity to observe excellent performance in this area? Because that starts conversation with your own line manager about, I would like to develop in this area. Who do I look to? Where are the resources? Who are my role models? So you're going to see some of the applications at the University of Otago Library today, but just to give you a quick whiz through the applications for Te Tōtara. This is the framework, this is the reference tool itself. It's a booklet, it's a static PDF, it's on the LIANZA website, it's also on the National Library website. This is what you refer to when you're using the supporting resources. And kaimahi can go in and look at that framework themselves, and we're finding that from an individual perspective, Te Tōtara is being used for people to develop their own next step professional development goals, to support conversations with their manager or team leader, to apply for or to revalidate their professional registration, and for personal career planning. They might use the workbook, and there's now an interactive version of this workbook. I'm not going to walk you through it. If you were to do that, you can have a look at the longer webinar we did last month on a full hour of introduction to Te Tōtara and Taku Tōtara. But this is an example of the literacies referenced in research services section again. And you'll see that it doesn't talk about a specific element, but it lets you note here, and you can pop in and tick what level you're at. You can make your own notes around your self-assessment so that you're ready to make a plan later in the document. That plan can be something that you put several steps into, like the seasons of the year, several stages, and you can put in several goals. So that becomes your learning and development calendar. There's also just a worksheet, a very simplified version of the workbook. Really good for casual staff, for introducing people to it who are new starters, or just those who are short on time, because the workbook is a more of a comprehensive approach. And this has a one-page self-assessment model where you can go in, also interactively, go in and tick your boxes, mark your levels, and then determine a quick plan, which is the same as the one in the workbook. Teams are using Te Tōtara also, and in fact, many of the early adopters in Aotearoa have taken a teams approach, and they've done it to identify current strengths, to take the pulse of confidence and capability in key areas. And some of those key areas that I've seen commonly prioritised have been to look at the roots, to look at the foundational knowledge around Te Tirisi and understanding of the values and kaupapa. Others have looked at digital literacy as an early key area that they've wanted to create a shared team goal around. And sometimes it's been used to support leadership, middle management people in the team to grow their ability to apply Te Tōtara to others. You can use it then to look at how do we assess the barriers and opportunities in our setting for workplace learning and do some planning around how to make learning available to people, and build a team learning and development plan. Can also support organisations teams to have a discussion with others in the organisation, and particularly around saying, look, we're good at this, but we want to strengthen this. It might be we want to strengthen bicultural practice in our workplace. We want to strengthen our long-range recruitment and service planning because we're not getting sort of the skills and people we want sort of when we just pop an ad out. We want to do some planning to grow people who are in our team now and to attract people in who aren't in our team yet. It could be used for strengthening engagement with the community, enriching the people and performance practices. So using Te Tōtara before people fill out that, end of year performance appraisal form where they put in their learning and development goals. Early adopters have had different ways of responding to Te Tōtara, but there's a very strong theme there around it's great for professional development for individuals, but also a gap analysis at team level. You'll also see a comment there about student hubs, frontline staff, shift workers. In the bigger library settings, in universities and polytechnics, you've often got a lot of students coming into the team who are working on the front line. So making a very practical use of capability discussions with them. What do you bring in? What would you need to know within this role we're bringing you into? It also gives them a picture of what they can grow into in the team. So there's lots and lots of applications for Te Tōtara, from strategic and advocacy all the way through to the team, what the team wants to focus on next, all the way through to what the individual is looking to do that supports them as a emerging or strong library professional. So I will come back to you later on in the webinar, and I'm going to hand over now to Siobhan and Frank and Sella to tell you about how they've been using Te Tōtara. Kia ora.
Kia ora, and thank you, Anne-Marie, for the introduction. I'm going to select who, hopefully, if nobody's waving their hands madly at me, everybody can see the next set of slides, where myself and my colleagues Frank and Sella are going to talk about Te Tōtara here at Te Pātaka Mataraka. And it's early days for us, but we're really excited to kind of share how we're dipping our toe into the framework, so to speak. And just to kind of set the scene, in 2023, after an extended period of consultation, the library strategy was completed. And there, at the centre of our strategy, there are these three guiding principles. And although Te Tōtara can contribute to all three, it is the third principle that I think it is particularly relevant for, but it supports us actually in terms of our professional development across all three. We see Te Tōtara as a tool to engage targeted capability building around these three principles, because for a start, it's New Zealand library sector specific, and it has this wonderful shared metaphor and language that we can use, and it's a kaupapa that's kind of growing from Te Ao Māori and Te Tiriti. And it's also descriptive and not prescriptive, and allows for flexibility and modification. And we're seeing iterations of that occurring, some quite large scale kind of changes to it, others tweaking. But the beauty of Te Tōtara as a framework is that it does give you that ability to kind of mould it to the values and expectations of your community. And I have a example of that coming up. So with Te Tōtara, we aspire to develop our staff to strengthen capability and capacity and transform their practices and respond to change. We want to nurture and strengthen the library team to be more inclusive and reflective of diversity in Aotearoa. And by using Te Tōtara metaphor of areas for sharing and growth, we like that's sharing and growth rather than a deficit model. So we can learn through collaboration and communicating and sharing and supporting each other using this framework. And it is in the early days, and much of what we will discuss is a little actual and a little aspirational, but hopefully 100% thought-provoking is what we're aiming for today. So we're going to kind of show where we're incorporating Te Tōtara into a self-assessment exercise, where it's been used for team building, and also as an outreach tool to support explaining kind of librarianship to university students. So I'm going to start with the self-assessment. So the customer experience principles is an initiative to support the library to maintain consistent and high quality customer experiences that are informed by our customers, our own expertise and industry research. And there are 9 principles in total that were developed in collaboration with library staff and students and various other customers, but particularly our students. These have been launched internally at the library, and the next phase is to develop a series of training opportunities so that the library staff can become more comfortable with the principles and what they actually mean, and before we launch them externally. So I've been working with the university HR training advisors. And the first step has been the development of a kind of asynchronistic online training module that introduces these principles and provides some entry-level professional development. And the aim is to follow this up with in-person workshops. So that's just kind of what the front access to it. It kind of is an area where we explain what the customer experience principles are. Then we've got a little bit about user experience, which is a kind of foundational tool that we use for delivering them. Areas for collaboration, area that connects you to broader courses and workshops in the university. And then there's like the actual training module itself, where we're kind of trying to support our staff to take a principle, but to kind of actualize what it looks like in practice. What does it look like when I am, for instance, recognising my obligations under Te Treaty, or making the library welcoming for everybody, or being there to help people make the most? What does that actually look like? And this is where Te Tōtara has come in. So I've got a self-assessment in the training module. And this is an exercise that draws from the sections of the framework related to the roots and the branches. So it doesn't use all the capabilities listed in the framework, just those that correlate to the customer experience principles. And these core capabilities that have been identified are the ones are the first of all the soil and roots around Te Tiriti and Te Ao Māori. The communication, the accessibility capabilities, the hospitality service and relationship capabilities, the diversity, inclusion and equity capabilities, cooperation, information sharing, and evaluation and planning. And so what I've done from there is created a self-assessment worksheet, which is actually based on the one that Kapiti Coast Libraries had as an example at LIANZA conference last year. But I mean, there's obviously a lot of crossover between the official workbooks that Anne-Marie showed and some of the stuff that's been developed from them. So that they're all kind of variations on the same theme. But the idea is to try and keep it as simple as possible so people feel confident to engage. Currently, it's set as a personal thing with the option to share with the manager and use it for professional development reviews, or PDRs as we call them at Otago. But I'd like to see with maturity that this can be reviewed, this decision just to make it personal will be reviewed. I'd like to move to an intention where we make it more an official part of our PDR process to support that goal setting part of the PDR. And so the next thing I just want to say, and this kind of relates back to what I said about it being descriptive and not prescriptive, and the strength of that in terms of being able to make it work for your community and their values. The module, I put the module, including the self-assessment, through the user testing phase. And on the whole, the self-assessment was really well received by my user testers. And actually, I specifically asked library staff who have not been actually in the job for very long to do the user testing, rather than the old heads who could probably, if there was something that wasn't clear or didn't make sense, would probably be able to work it out in their heads. I wanted the raw cadets. So that was something I quite did deliberately. But one of the interesting things that came up was that the communication capability section, just in the mohio, the knowledge comfortable area, was using what was considered some ableist language. Now I'm neurodivergent, so I immediately saw what they were seeing in it, and some specific examples, for instance, could be asking appropriate questions. Well, appropriate is actually quite a loaded term in the neurodiverse community. Some people ask questions that they believe are very appropriate, but maybe won't hit that way to a neurotypical. Monitoring own and others' non-verbal cues with adaptation required. Now, if you can imagine, if you're particularly, say, on the autistic spectrum, for instance, that's not necessarily something that would hit very well if you read that. And then one for the ADHs and the ADHDers in the audience, like myself, speaking clearly at right pace and volume. I don't think I've ever spoken at the right pace and volume in my entire life. So to be able to master these things at the really basic, comfortable level could be quite confronting. So I'm trying to modify this section with some better alternatives. I've alerted Anne-Marie and the custodians of Te Tōtara so they can do their own investigation. But in terms of us and the use of it, we're kind of like asking, like maybe rather than asking appropriate questions, maybe something more like asking relevant questions might hit better. Being mindful with different communication styles might be better, or even for the last one, communicating ideas in a clear and accessible way. I mean, these are not perfect. What I'm now doing, so I'm working with neurodiverse library staff and also a wider Otago neurodiversity collective, and I'm trying to get ideas around different wording and that in order to modify this so that it just feels a little less ableist to our neurodiverse library staff. And you know, that's the great thing about Te Tōtara, is that you can change aspects of it to suit your values and community, but not lose the essence of it or its value as a self-assessment tool. So this is not intended as a criticism of the framework. It's actually a strength of the framework as I see it. And now I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Frank.
Oh, kia ora. Do I just... Oh, can people hear me? So, aroha mai. Cool. O tēnā koutou katoa, katoa hau ki te mihi atu ki a koutou. Ko ai ahau, he uri tēnei no Ngāti Kahungunu ki te Wairoa, ngai tūoi mai i Ngāti Ruapani, me katoa hoki ko Frank Iruiti ahau. Kia ora everybody, my name's Frank. As my introduction has been said, but my bones are actually from the far north, from Waikato Moana and Wairoa in the Hawke's Bay, and I've also got a foot down here in the South Island from Aotearoa or Bluff. So I'm very privileged and honoured to be here today. I've only been working here a short time, so yeah, this is quite a privilege. So thank you. I know the karakia has been started, but this is just of who I am, so I'm going to do this one as well. Nothing like doing overkill with karakia, you can never get enough of it. So, manawa mai te Māori nuku, manawa mai te Māori rangi, ko te Māori keo, he Māori tipua, ka pakaru mai te pō, tau mai te Māori, haumi e hui e, tāeki e. So, next, please. Thank you. So, so when I see this image, what resonates for me first is whakapapa, genealogy, hence the family tree. It also represents a narrative of Ranginui and Papatuanuku, the creation story. Tāne Mahuta forcing his parents apart into Te Ao Marama, the world of light and enlightenment. And this rākau, this tōtara, is one of Tāne Mahuta's children, one of many. And if you like, which has some strong significance, it represents strength, life, a bit like Iwa, the tree of souls out of Avatar, if you've seen it. And also, it's also about acknowledgement, recognition, sadness, and also survival. So historically, tōtara has had great cultural significance for Māori, as Anne-Marie's already said, regarding waka, carvings for marae, for its colour and its prize for its durability. So it's used for many things, but it's also important to acknowledge the significant fellings of tōtara, deforestation, and now through conservation efforts, these trees are protected to allow regeneration. And which is so connected to what we're talking about, you know, what is the future like, and how this powerful image can help us move forward. So these whakatoki, these two whakatoki they've got here are quite significant for me when I see this. because they're sort of like markings, or it tells you of some significant event that is happening. So the first one, he tōtara wāhirua, he kaina te ahi. So as it says, a tōtara split into two is fuel for the fire. In another way, it's also about unity. Mahi tahi tātou, all working together. And the next one also, kua hinga te tōtara i te waunui o Atane. It should be, yeah, waunui Atane. That talks about that one of the trees have fallen. So that's in recognition of someone of nobility or rangatira status. So this was used quite a lot of particularly when someone has passed away in your family, or particularly as someone who's been around for a chief, kingi tu heitia, etc. So when you see this in any writing you may get in an email or whatever, it's of some significance that someone has fallen. So in relation to the tōtara standing in the forest, when it does fall, it is a great significance for the whole family in the ngahere. And as I said, these are some of the words that resonate with me as well. Rangatiratanga, kotahitanga, mana, mauri, and whakapapa. Thank you. Next. As people have already talked about, these really resonated with me. So po tarawaho o te tōtara, so po, that means the framework of te tōtara. I really like these. They really spoke to me around building a team and how they're all interconnected. So I won't go on about them because they've already been spoken about. But these are some of the things that I was going, oh yeah, we probably do this anyway throughout our work. So I just want to acknowledge that. So thank you. Next. So I guess bringing it sort of back in relation to what we're talking about today, I guess for me, tōtara, for me, how I try and do that in my everyday work, a big part of me is using different types of tools. So potama, so if we click on that again, thank you. So if we look at poema, you'll see a lot of these in marae or in tukutuku patterns that has significant meaning and is a metaphor that describes the way we learn or acquire knowledge to create pathway or steps to achieve your goals. So this relates really well for me when I'm working with my team. How do we achieve our goals? Because we work broadly across each other's areas within our library. So it's really important that we do have goals. And I like using the potama for that. And also encompassing that is a big tool for me is whakawhanaungatanga, making meaningful connections and creating opportunities for staff to get involved in kaupapa. And each part of this potama or steps, as you can see, represents different levels of acquiring of what your goal is. So for example, the first step could be mihi mihi, meet and greet, like we did today. Whakawhanaungatanga, getting to sort of know each other. Mahi tahi, so what is the work that we get up to do together? And then kia iki panuku, which is around, okay, then we've got to keep moving on. What's the next part of the process to achieve our goal? And that's where I believe that the tōtara, the framework, reflects that as well. So as I said, it's all very much connected. Oh, the next one, please. And another thing, probably I like to use as part of this is tuakana taina. Quite often it's sort of mistaken that it's just the older and the younger person, but it's in family. Tuakana taina, when it comes to whakapapa in my family, there's a ranking or a pecking order, right? So it's sort of like, your place, you're the middle child or you're the youngest or the eldest, whatever. Each person has its role. So no matter where I stand, my elder brothers will always be my tuakana. It doesn't matter. But depending on what the job is, sometimes it can fluctuate. And that happens here at work. So someone younger than me may have more history or knowledge about a particular subject, well, I would see that person as tuakana to me. And so it can often change sometimes. So it's important to recognize that, because within our teams, everyone has knowledge, everyone has gifts of things, of gifts that they bring with them, and it's important to highlight that. So I like to always see what each other brings in their kete, so to speak, and sharing your kete. So just to give you a couple of examples, because as Siobhan has sort of alluded to, this is pretty new. I've only just sort of come on the scene since June. But what resonated with me was the fact that how well everyone works together here. And I was just thinking about a couple of examples that Te Tōtara could be used. So one thing though, that I've sort of been working on is supporting another staff member around having a staff wānanga. And so what that looks like, I don't know if you can see behind my board, some planning had already started around what the wānanga would look like for 2025, how we're going to get people involved, working out our goals. So within that kaupapa of taking staff out to a marae, it's a great opportunity for staff to get involved at any level and reinforce some of these values, core values, throughout the Tōtara framework. And because sometimes it's not until you actually experience it that you actually get the idea of what actually all this means to us, what we're talking about. Otherwise, sometimes it can get lost with lots of paper, can get lost within all these things you have to fill out, which I think are cool because I need that. I like lists. But for some people, they like getting involved and getting their hands dirty. So, so I think with the planning with our wānanga, I think it's sort of quite exciting for the new year. So I definitely know I'm going to be using that handbook to make sure I've got my things all ticked off as I go along. But I just thought I wanted to share that. And I know there's been a number of other things that we're involved with at the moment. And I did hear someone saying around the confidence for people using te reo and waiata and karakia. If there's one thing that's been good here is that we do that every morning here at the library now. We have waiata and karakia at 8:45 on the ground floor, and we'll be getting students coming in and joining us or commenting on, wow, this is a nice way to start the morning. So, and it's just building people's confidence who probably wouldn't come out and sing in front of everybody. So it's just little things like that are huge, though. Sorry, I know I can hear my wife saying you're rambling now, so I'll carry on. So, in my summary. So, as we look to the future, much like the Tōtara, our growth depends on both individual resilience and collective strengths. And I guess together, by nurturing the roots in our work, we can build a legacy that endures, empowering each of us to serve our people and uphold our values and our integrity. However, without a real commitment to weaving this framework into our mahi, it risks being, as I said before, just another document. But if we embrace it fully, grounding our actions in these values, it becomes a living document or a living guide that strengthens our work. Sometimes we embody these values without even realizing it. Even today, opening up with karakia, doing a little mihi, so without even realizing it. So what some might call, here's my new word, unconscious competence. At first, I thought the term was unconscious bias, but it's not. But in Te Ao Māori, I'd call it tikanga tuku iho. So that sort of means the inherited sort of customs that guide us instinctively. Sometimes you've got to trust your gut, and go with something. So just as the roots for the Tōtara guide its growth, let's not let this framework remain as words and pictures, but bring it to life through our actions. And next, I think. So this kauriki I'll finish off with is the one which is actually in the framework, which speaks about this amazing kaupapa. So I thought it would be quite nice to end my kōrero with this, and also giving the recognition and honour of this kaupapa. So i te kaupapa, whaia te mātauranga ki mārama kia whaitake ngā mahi katoa, tū maia, tū kaha, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou i a tātou katoa. Ngā mihi.
Kia ora, kia ora, Frank. And now I'll invite Sella to finish off the trio.
Nice, thank you. So my name is Sella Polefehoko. I am the Pacific Engagement Advisor, and as you know, the roles of engagement / liaison is about engaging Pacific students, academic staff, and just communities in your workplace, and specifically for me, it's the university. So before I delve into how I use the Te Tōtara capabilities framework, I would just give a little bit of background first about what I'm currently doing in the library and how that influences my work. Next, just all three. So one way that helps shape my role is working on our library Pacific Strategic Framework at the moment, which is shaped by the university's overall Pacific Strategic Framework. So I'm very lucky to not only have started in the library, I've been in the library just over a year and a half now. And so that seems to help guide the work that I currently do at the university. And so I use a lot of it to influence the work. And so with our library Pacific Strategic Framework, this is some of the, you could say, the goals that that is in alignment with what I want to do, if that kind of makes sense. So for me, it was about engaging students to demystify the library space and services, collaborating with teams in the library as well as the community networks in the university. So that is my opportunity to get involved in the Pacific communities that are out there within our divisions, or you can say the faculties. This was my opportunity in working with them, as well as working with library staff within the university. So that's how I like to do my work. I don't like to do it alone. I like to involve my teams and everyone in the library. If you talk to anyone in the library, I am very passionate about the library. I've come from careers development from the University of Auckland, and I just find that I have discovered the library and I'm so passionate about it, and I want to take the library out into the community, and this passion seems to follow me, and that's how I usually do my work. Next slide, Sharon, please. Yes, next. Yeah, I think all three. Yeah. So for me, this was the perfect opportunity, was when our library student assistant role was coming up. And of course, like what Siobhan said, we want to build the workforce. And also for me, specifically, as well as for Frank, we have to diversify the workforce. And for me, that was beginning with our student levels. As you know, it is very hard for our students to get involved in the library because they have this idea that all you do is scan books and you sit at your desk. So for me, I was like, okay, if I feel this passionate about the library, I want to be able to show the students and also educate them about what we do in the library. So again, I use the library student assistant role. I sent out emails to all the staff, all of our associate Pacific deans in the universities. And then again, that is a perfect way for me to engage our academic staff, is seeing how active we are in the library. That's what I want. I want the connection. I want to build connections and so forth. and then there you go. I'm not going to read it, but that's basically how I saw the opportunity to, yeah. So what did I do with this? Okay, I'll give you a little bit of background. So what I did was I set up an event and I sent it out to the students for them to come along for an information session. So it was an information workshop that I had created for our students. And so when I had the students come along to the session, next, Siobhan, next. So this is how I used the Te Tōtara framework when I was in front of the students. So I was able to share our vision as a library as well as the university. That's that one down there where it says the library is about service, acknowledging, diversifying, diversity and catering to those differences. So this is me providing this information and also making it relatable to our Māori and Pacific students. The next slide is, I went into the Te Tōtara capabilities frameworks to view the capability groups, if you had saw it in the beginning. And from that, I also aligned it with the teams that we currently have that is structured in our university. So I saw where our executive managers, where they function. So that's at a leadership level. I also looked at our customer service. So all of this information was from the Te Tōtara. And luckily for Siobhan, she had directed me to this because I had already turned up at her door with a notepad and pen and I was ready to interview her about her library careers. And so she said, no, have a look at this. And this is exactly how I used it. So I looked at the different groups. And then I also aligned it with what we currently have at the university. So for me, talking to the students, it isn't just about, curating because they hear about these things, but also talking to them about research. That's also something that our students at university don't really put two and two together. They always think being a researcher is in the lab. And so I have to talk to them about what our reference guides or what our subject experts are doing in that space. So I'm really planting a seed where they can really see themselves in the library. And this is exactly how I used the capabilities framework. And then from that, I'm providing them an idea of what are the career pathways they have in the library. And then the third slide is I unpacked what are their skills and the capabilities. And one of the reasons why I unpacked this is because some of those students actually already come, and they've come into this workshop or they've come into this event and they have these skills. So I wanted to see themselves in the library. So, and I guess this was an opportunity for me to also talk to them about where they practice these skills. So for some of them, and I think in our capability groups, there's a lot of community service. There's a lot of just service. The word service seems to be everywhere in the capabilities framework. And so I wanted to tell the students that the service that they practice within their cultural communities in the marae, they already have these skills. So for them to come in and think, oh, I need to have years of experience working in the public library before they can get a job at the university. And it's things like that. So that was me showing them they already have hospitality. If they're already being taught how to service our matuas on, on the marae, if you're at church, and, from my own experience, I've been able to unpack some of that. So the Te Tōtara framework for me was used as a reference tool for career development for these students. And so I was able to, one, demystify the library space as, again, not just about the shushing part. That always seems to be the idea. And the slides that I had before this was, what's your idea about the library? And I had some images of like from the website of people shushing, and that's what they thought about it. And for me, I was like, oh, that's so heartbreaking. And so that's how I used it. And so I used it because there was depth in there's depth in what we do in the library. That's what I wanted to show them. We create and develop, and I can show them that this is what we use to develop as library staff. So this, for me, this framework was very effective because it created conversations and it highlighted the skills that we have and also what they can also have, and what they can bring from their spaces into the library. So for me, the most important thing that this framework had enabled for us was the students did feel left feeling empowered. They left feeling empowered, they were more knowledgeable about the library, and then again, that was my opportunity to build trust and connection. So from that workshop alone, I have a lot of students that say hello to me, and they use me as my the person of go-to, basically. And that's, yeah, so that's how I used it in my space. So, malo apito.
Kia Stella. Emery, I'm not entirely sure if we've got time for patai now. I mean, I'll let you make the call there, you and Diana, but yeah.
There's not a lot of questions in the chat. So there are some comments about some great summaries being included. I think that if people do have questions, we could suggest that they just get emailed through to Anne-Marie, and then she can collect up the questions and send them to the appropriate people for feedback. Does that work?
Yep, that sounds really good. Well done to you guys for coming on and sharing that breadth of experience. I'm sure there will be questions and people will want to follow up with you. You can go to the LIANZA webpage and get my address under professional development, and the Te Tōtara workforce capability page. You'll also find the resources that you can download and save and put on your own drive. They become your workbook, your worksheet, and of course the framework's there. And there's a monthly community of practice, and I'm going to invite Frank and Stella to share their experiences in a future meeting that's once a month every Thursday at midday. So there's lots of opportunities to keep on engaging around this discussion, this kōrero. And yeah, thank you so much for your participation today, both as presenters and as participants. Kia ora.
Thank you. Frank, would you like to say your closing karakia again? Would you be okay about doing that? You're on mute, if that's okay.
The one that I had.
Perhaps you could just say it. Are you okay about saying your karakia?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'll finish off with this one. Mā te hauma. Thank you.
Ka pai. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us today. And as we said, we will be sending out the recording to you. Thank you to Frank, Siobhan and Stella and Anne-Marie. Thank you everybody. Ngā mihi.
Ka kite.
Ka kite.